When you look at the logos of some of the biggest American companies, IBM, ABC, UPS, what do you see? To most, they're just logos that have been around since you could remember. In a way, they're a part of your psyches, your zeitgeist, but to those in the know, these designs are the fingerprints of a genius. A man who didn't just create logos, he revolutionized the thought process, the idea of a graphic designer, of graphic design, and how to present your work. His name was Paul Rand, and before he was known for his logos, he was known for magazine illustrations, for Esquire, a graphic designer for newsprint. He was a reluctant art director, a sign painter, but before all that, he was Peretz Rosenbaum.
Paul's a phenomenal thinker.
I guarantee you all know his work.
Paul Rand.
Paul Rand.
A good designer improves the general quality of life, which is the only reason for our existence.
This is the story of the man who branded America, and the man who had to hide his true self for the love of design. So sit back and relax, because we're going to go deep into not just the man himself, but how he birthed the idea and process of modern graphic design and designers. Paul Rand was born to a different name in 1914 in Brooklyn, New York, to Orthodox Jewish immigrants. From a young age, he was fascinated by visuals. He did sign paintings for his father's grocery store and always had a knack for good design. His father, though skeptical of art as a career, supported his interest in drawing. With a catch, Paul had to take night classes in business because he just didn't see a future in art, which may have been a good idea in the long run, as we'll see. I don't think Paul or his dad knew at the time that art would translate into graphic design, because at the time, graphic design really wasn't a thing. I mean, it was, but it also wasn't. We kind of talked about this in the Saul Bass video, which you can watch here, but this was a time when graphic design was becoming more than it was. Paul enrolled at the Pratt Institute, the Parsons School of Design, and the Art Students League between 1929 and 1934, but Rand later claimed he was largely self-taught. He was more influenced by different works, magazines, and the European modernist movement more than any other curriculum. He thought the school was teaching him more about art than good design. By the time he was in his 20s, Rand already began signing his work as Paul Rand, a short Americanized name he believed would look better on magazine covers. Or was it? Now, from what I researched, his friends thought having a Jewish name would slow down his career significantly, so he thought he had to change it to a more common name. Now, being the brand strategist that he was, he took it as an assignment to make it the most efficient and brand-friendly name he could. So he thought a 4-letter last and first name in even numbers would make it easier to recognize and remember. And so it was. His old self, an art student from Brooklyn with ideas of the future, kinda disappeared. However, with that sunset in his life, Paul Rand was ready to invade the scene, literally writing the book on what a modern graphic designer is and does. Rand's first big break came when he began working for Parallel Arts magazine and later Esquire and Direction. These covers were different, minimalist, conceptual, and bold. He didn't just decorate a cover, he communicated an idea. One of his notable works was from the magazine called Direction, where he had total creative freedom. You can really see his early thought process and ideas on graphic design here. He treated graphic design like visual journalism. He said design is the silent ambassador to your brand. He wanted to compete with the Bauhaus movement and even Picasso. He also did the work for free in exchange for full artistic freedom, which I've said in my podcast, which I have to get back into totally, that you shouldn't do work for free, but also sometimes it's not a bad idea, and this kind of was one of those moments. Anyway, if you want to check out that episode, link below, and I plan to start that up again, so please subscribe if you want. I'd like to hear what you think. But anyway, back to the show. This period helped him develop a language, geometric forms, collages, photography, and most importantly, the concept-driven approach that would later define his legacy. While at Esquire, he worked with William H. Weintraub, who had left at the end of the 1930s to establish his own advertising office, and decided to bring Paul with him as chief art director. But while he enjoyed the work and creative freedom, he was setting up to basically be the de facto corporate brand designer, the likes we haven't seen before. Paul Rand wasn't the first person to design logos, but he was the first to treat them like a designer. After World War II, specifically in the 1950s and 60s, American corporations were booming, and Rand saw an opportunity. Corporations started popping up and corporate identity became a big topic. He believed the logo wasn't just a mark, it was a corporate signature that needed to last for decades. Rand's approach was revolutionary: simplicity, functionality, and timelessness. And I know for a lot of you designers, this is, well, duh, but he started this. He created this idea. In 1959, he created the Colorforms logo. A year after that, it was the Westinghouse logo, which he said, a W is just a W. But if you want to make a logo out of a W, it's hard. So he added 3 dots. He just thought it looked better. Which brings me to an important point. Design isn't really art. It takes points and inspirations from art, or at least the fine arts movement, but the two are very separate entities. Art is neither good nor bad, it's literally what's in the eye of the beholder, but design must fit a purpose. He didn't have a grand, overly profound reason for the 3 dots. He just thought it looked better than not having them, and he was kind of right. And the majority of people thought he was right too. The point is, he didn't just do it to make it look better, he did it because it functionally worked. It made sense. Then in 1962, he designed the Cummins logo, but one of the larger projects was the IBM logo in 1956. He later refined it in 1972 and is a masterclass in corporate design. Using slab serif typography and bold blue lines, Rand created a logo that symbolized stability, modernism, and intelligence. Originally, Thomas Watson Jr. hired Elliott Noyes to create a corporate design program, so he in return hired Paul to redesign the corporate logo. In 1967, Paul created a 13-stripe version of the IBM logo because he was bothered by the way the letters were naturally sized. If you look at the letters, the I is very thin, the B is triple that size, and the M is about a half larger than the B. He thought it wasn't balanced. They were a descending rhythm. He thought it was too visually assertive. The bars broke that up while also giving the brand a look of security, like you were safe with IBM. Later, he created an 8-stripe version to be used on letterheads and smaller items. For ABC in 1962, he used basic geometric shapes to mirror television screens. Brilliant, simple, and instantly recognizable. And his UPS redesign in 1961 with a gift box above the shield, he communicated service, reliability, and care in a single image. After that, he designed the Yale Press logo in 1985 and the Next logo in 1986. I also did another video about a very famous UI designer for Apple who interacted with Paul, which you can watch right here or in the link below. Listen, Steve liked designers. In 1996, Paul designed the Enron logo, a company that has never been mired in controversy, of course. Paul didn't just give companies a logo, he gave them a voice. You see, he approached logo design as a business problem that needed to be solved. He also didn't like giving clients multiple options. In an interview, he once said, when you go to the doctor, he doesn't give you options, he gives you solutions to the problem. You pay for it, and it's up to you whether you take it or not. This was the philosophy he famously used for Steve Jobs when he created the Next logo. He also believed the logo only became meaningful after it's been used, seen, and associated with the business. For example, the Ford logo disassociated with the brand means nothing. It's the guy's last name, right? But as the brand grew and the marketing experience and cars evolved, the logo became the household name everyone remembers. I mean, it's to the point now where if I showed you this, you know what it is. You know what they are. But like Paul said, it didn't start that way. He fully understood a logo only becomes meaningful only after it's used. The illustration that represents the logo is the product, but not the logo. That comes after the logo. It needs to be seen and associated, and that association defines the logo. Paul also started the trend of presentations for his designs. He actually pioneered the idea of a detailed manual that showed how to use the brand, the idea behind it, and how the evolution of the logo became to be. This was the dawn of graphic standards manuals, and if you're a designer who has worked for an organization, you know exactly what those are. Paul basically used this to showcase his work, and you kind of have to thank him for all those things, because he kind of built it, invented it, designed it. At the heart of Rand's work was a simple philosophy: form and function are one. He believed design should be timeless and had a disdain for traditional or historical art. He thought without clear communication, the design had failed. He was deeply influenced by modernism, particularly the Bauhaus movement, which championed the idea that design should serve a purpose, not just look pretty. But he was also a salesman, a pitchman for his work. Thank you, Dad, for the business classes. Along with his graphic standard manuals and presentation brochures, he just didn't design, he explained why his design was the best. He pioneered modern design and graphic designers. I mean, honestly, a lot of how we do things as graphic designers today is because of what he started. You see, before him and a lot of the other early modern graphic designers, ads had a lot of copy. I mean, look at some of these. These were technically designed and laid out, but they were designed without purpose. It was messy. Paul saw graphic and type as a continuum and wanted them to work together to maximize its relationship with the ad. He knew this wasn't right. This was too much, and also not enough. Rand believed that good design solves problems, communicates ideas clearly, and has enduring aesthetic value. And this follows his 4 principles of design. A logo derives meaning from the quality of the thing it symbolizes, not the other way around. The subject matter of a logo needs not match the subject matter of the business it represents. The only mandate in logo design is that it be distinctive, memorable, and clear. Presentation is key. And finally, simplicity is not the goal. It is the byproduct of a good idea and modest expectation. He liked to use a limited color palette in all his designs, and while he was known for his logo designs, he also did a lot of annual reports, believing typography was the most important part of any annual report. A lot of highly designed annual reports with their infographic style were all pretty much inspired by his early work. But he also designed movie posters, packaging, and book covers. He created children's books. He designed his own home in Connecticut and taught at Yale for decades and received the AIGA gold medal. But one of my favorite things about him, because I kind of agree with him, he thought Norman Rockwell was kind of boring. And his colleagues like Saul Bass famously said he was 5 years older than me. But that time Paul was already famous, and I quote, "That son of a bitch." Saul used to watch his work like a hawk. But I think one of the most famous things he did was the iconic IBM poster in 1981. Originally designed for an internal conference, the design became so iconic, it was used everywhere, and he often said, "Don't try to be original, just try to be good." He believed originality came naturally from understanding and mastering the basics. He said a designer can improve the quality by making it look better and can help improve the product through industrial design. A good designer who understands their business makes things memorable, easy to recall, and improves the general quality of life, which he said was the only reason for existence for a designer. And he's not wrong. I mean, that's what I like about Paul. He broke everything down to the bare essentials, the definition of what a designer is, what a design should be, what a logo should be. Rand loved the power of play. He used humor, wit, and visual puns in much of his work, but every element, every line, shape, and letter had a reason to exist. He said the notion that the humorous approach to visual communication is undignified or belittling is sheer nonsense. Humor is a means of creating confidence and goodwill. He took great joy in solving problems. He got a kick out of doing something that is right for the job. He said content and aesthetic are the most important thing, otherwise you're just wasting your time. In 1986, after leaving Apple, Steve Jobs founded Next and approached Rand to design the logo. Rand didn't pitch several ideas. He gave Jobs one. Just one. Which is crazy, because at the time, he said his minimum fee was $100K for a logo. And if you're a designer now who has ever created a logo, that's a crazy concept. But like I said earlier, it makes sense. When Jobs asked, "Can I see some options?" Rand said, "No, I will solve your problem and you will pay me." Baller. Jobs later called hiring Rand one of the best decisions of my life. He thought his demeanor was refreshing. He thought Paul was a thinker. The Next logo, bold, geometric, colorful, perfectly captured the fusion of technology and creativity that Jobs envisioned. You see, Steve liked how Apple used the iconography independently of the name, a kind of jewel, but that kind of stuff takes a while for just a symbol to be associated with the name. I mean, the M in McDonald's means nothing at first. It took time. The Burger Company had a logo in 1948, and it took 45 years for them to release a logo with just the M. Steve didn't want to wait that long, so the symbol became the logo. The name inside the cube. In terms of the logo itself, Paul thought Next was like the word exit, and having it stacked may make the logo misinterpreted by the reader. Having the lowercase e stop that from happening. And he used that case sensitivity to differentiate the word. Kind of simple if you think about it, but also a very powerful, iconic visual representation. It takes a simple word from boring to interesting. He also said the lowercase e could be used as education, excellence, expertise, exceptional. Since everything else was uppercase, the lowercase e could represent a myriad of things. The logo took only 2 weeks to create, and he presented it to Steve in his booklet, which you can download, link below, if you want to see how he problem solved. It's a very interesting look into his mind's eye. When interviewed, Steve said he saw a lot of Paul's work, but didn't know much about him. When he needed a corporate identity for Neck, he was the only designer Steve's team approached. Steve said when working with Paul, he found him to be extremely bright and a heart of gold. He thought of him as having a slightly tough exterior, but with a teddy bear interior, saying he was one of the most professional people he has ever worked with. And if you know Steve Jobs, that was a huge compliment. But again, Steve liked designers. Sadly, Paul Rand died in 1996 at the age of 82 of cancer, but his legacy is everywhere. Today, design schools around the world teach his principles, and his books are still required reading. His influence can be seen in the logos of Google, Airbnb, Spotify, designs that aim for simplicity, clarity, and memorability. And it's funny because he once said he never liked the title art director, nor did he see himself as one. He said even when he was an art director, he wanted to do the work. He said good design can touch the emotions and gratify the human spirit. But more than logos, Rand left us a new way of thinking about design. That design is problem solving, that it can be artistic and rational, that it must be honest, timeless, and human. Paul Rand was more than a designer. He was a communicator, a philosopher, a craftsman. He showed the world that great design isn't about decoration, it's about meaning. In a world overwhelmed with noise, Rand's work reminds us simplicity speaks the loudest.
Of graphic design, of painting is art. That's the genre. It's all art.
Hey, if you enjoyed this deep dive into the life of Paul Rand, hit that like button, subscribe for more design history, and let me know in the comments who you'd like to see next. Because I'm running out of ideas. I really need some. Anyway, thanks for watching, and remember, good design, it's good business.
Stop that. Yeah, I hear him chat to the noise. And stop for the talking. I hear him chat with the